No, thank you. Everybody, one more, give it one more. It is such an honor to have you. First of all, everybody, good afternoon. My name is Mark Monhill. I'm the owner of Uncle Bobbie's Coffee and Books. Stop, you ain't got to pretend. And welcome to, many of you have been here many times. Some of you are here for the first time. We love all of it. And we're grateful that you all come for one of our author talks here at Uncle Bobbie's Coffee and Books, which we do every week. So make sure you come back. Make sure you check us out, make sure you show us some love. But today we have really one of the premier voices in America right now. Y'all know her from MSNBC. That amazing show where she tells the truth every day. Where she holds people accountable every day. And where she puts faces and voices on television that otherwise wouldn't be there. She is a treasure. And somehow, in the midst of all that truth-telling, all that journalism, all that fighting, and she's managed to write a book. And it's a hell of a book. It's called The Man Who Sold America.
The man on that.
We know who you're booing. Like Valdemar, we don't say his name unless we got to. I'll leave it up to you to say it. But we are here with Joyanne Reid, and I couldn't be happier. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to be here, Mark. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
Thank you for inviting me. This is great. Well, actually, we kind of were like, Mark, can we come over? Because, you know, I had to see Uncle Bobbie's. I had to have the Uncle Bobbie's experience. So thank you for allowing me to invite myself into your home. I appreciate it.
That's actually how it happened. I was on a podcast, and we were drinking wine. We were arguing about rap music, and before I knew it, we were talking about, hey, you got to come on and talk about this book. And you were so generous to do so. And what a time to be writing a book like this.
Yeah, and let me be purely promotional. The podcast is called Read This, Read That. If you'd like to download it every week, me and Jack and Reid. So yeah, we were feeding, and we do serve wine to make it more fun.
Yes.
And so so I was like, please gonna come to Uncle Bobbie's, I want to go. So thank you, and thank you all for coming. It's very kind of you all to be here. And so in terms of why I write this book, part of the reason that I wanted to do it, because at first I did not want to write a Trump book. I have to think about Donald Trump 5 days a week, sometimes 7. Like this week I'm doing a 7-day week. So I have to deal with him every day. And so I didn't really necessarily, writing a book it's grueling. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of time. You don't spend a lot of time with your family. And so I wanted to write a historical book. That's what I was, in my mind, I wanted to do. But in just talking with my agent and my team and the book team at HarperCollins, we were just like, you know what, we need to write a history of this madness. Because we all feel the same way about it. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm going to write this so that just I can remember it all. Because so much happens. He's doing so much every day. And we're forgetting 10 bad things he did by the time he does the 11th thing. So I just wanted to record it so I remember. And record a history so that people can have a very, straightforward history of how the hell this happened.
I'm glad you said that, because in the book, you begin by laying this really interesting background, but you address that very question, how did this happen? And I think for a lot of us, it's like a blur. We just woke up on November 8, 2016, thinking it was a bad dream, hoping something bad happened, find out we've been tricked. And then he was still president that morning. How did we get to this point? What had to happen? And you talk about this in the book. What had to happen for him to become president?
Yeah, I would say it's a mathematical formula that is good old-fashioned American racism that's been here since the beginning of the country, plus Obama, plus television. I think that's the formula.
Say a little bit more about the television part, because I think that's the part people have the least.
And the reason we even called the book The Man Who Sold America is that from the time that Donald Trump became a well-known person in the 1980s, he has been running a giant scam. There's never been anything that you think you know about Donald Trump that's ever been true. In his autobiography, he told his autobiographer that his family was from Sweden. They're not, they're German. He told his autobiographer and tried to make it seem like he was this up from nothing Queens boy who just got to be a billionaire through his own devices. No, he inherited $413 million. And then he lost $1 billion. Went $1 billion in the hole. And because, to be blunt, he's white and rich, and still rich on paper, banks just still lent him money. So he was able to build himself back. But what really brought Trump back, what people don't understand, did anybody watch The Apprentice? Did anybody used to watch that show? I never watched it, because I lived in New York in the late 1980s when he was being his full racist self with the Central Park 5.
You saw the Central Park 5, yeah?
Yeah, I was there a little older than them, and so we were watching this every day. So I never could stand The Apprentice. I didn't want to watch him because I just thought of him as this racist, horrible person. But when he started The Apprentice, he was still broke. So The Apprentice, which really was supposed to be Survivor in the city. So Survivor was really, really successful. And so the same producers who produced Survivor decided they wanted to do a sequel that was Survivor in the City. And basically Donald Trump auditioned for it by redoing a skating rink in New York. He said he was going to do it for free for the city and not make any money on it, but the way he did it for free is he got the people who actually did the work to do it, and then he never paid them. So it's always been a scam, but that impressed the producers of The Apprentice so much. They loved his moxie. They saw him at the opening, and he was so over the top that they hired him for The Apprentice. The Apprentice made Donald Trump rich after he was literally broke on paper. I mean, I tell a story in the book about that I have a source that was associated with The Apprentice who said, like, Trump Tower was falling apart when they started filming it. It was dingy and grimy. It was falling. You could see that it was in decay. And it was the NBC refurbished it to make it look, and the conference room that you saw, if you watched The Apprentice, that was a set they built because the real conference room was too, like, grungy at that point. He's talking about decay today. He's talking about people having burden and everything.
Baltimore, right?
Right. So everything about him is a lie. And so, but television, that show, and also his persistence in getting on TV and getting quoted in magazines and people quoting him and making himself seem successful. He was really good at selling himself as being successful. And so he was able to trick people into thinking he was this, incredible maverick that could save the country. So I think that was the television part. The second part is he's just a good old-fashioned Queens racist. And when he ran for office, he was supposed to give this speech about how I made it through this country and the greatness of the country and we can all make it together. But instead, he came down that escalator and just went full-on crazy racist.
Yeah.
And even though his team was thinking, oh my God, he just blew himself up, it appealed to a lot of other people who felt the same way.
So help me understand that, because before you get to him running for president, as you said, he pulled the punch a few times going in, a couple of election cycles. He didn't do it. But when he really started warming up in 2015, the birtherism picked up. He wanted to see President Obama's records. He wanted his school scores. He played the affirmative action card at the same time that he's sealing his own records.
Right.
I mean, it's fascinating, right? And Cohen talks about this in your book.
Yeah.
Was this a calculated strategy of him, or did he stumble into this type of foaming at the mouth racism as well?
I have to say, the one thing that people in media do that is the least true is to ever use the word strategy and Trump in the same sentence. It is not a strategy. He's just this guy. I would say, I was tweeting today that Donald Trump is like, if you have like an old relative and now they're retired and all they do is sit in front of the TV going, now he's burning it up. I'm getting straight. Or they go in the comment section and they like comment in the comment section, they get banned because they tweet the N-word. That's true. Like, he's not actually a sophisticated man. I mean, he did go to an Ivy League school, but his daddy paid to get him in. And he had bad grades, and he's not not very smart. Have you ever heard him try to speak English? He talks about people not speaking English. I mean, he doesn't really speak well. So, but when he's that guy, and you all have known this person or seen this person who is inadequate in comparison to someone brown or black, and hates that person so much because they feel that they have what I should have. How the hell did they get this job? Or how did they get this car? How the hell did they get this house? I should have that. I'm better than them. That's Trump. And so when he does stuff like that, his team has to backfill in, and they say, oh no, this is three-dimensional chess. So he's doing this because he's playing chess while you're playing checkers. They have to say that, because what else are they going to say?
He's bonkers. I guess it doesn't work as a campaign strategist.
Right. I mean, look at who he's working for him. If Donald Trump was a great strategist, he would have some of the top, there are some really smart Republicans. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with their strategy. I don't agree with their philosophy. There's some smart Republicans. Not one would work for him.
Yeah.
He can't, this is a C team of Republicans that are working for him.
Yeah. I mean, that was fascinating as well. I mean, no one thought he could win. And I remember...
Nor did he.
Nor did he. That's another important point that we should circle back to, because you argue that he didn't go into this wanting to be president. He wanted to put on a presidential kind of spectacle, a presidential show.
Yeah.
Why would someone go to such extravagant lengths to not be president? You could not be president and do nothing. I ain't gonna be president, I ain't did nothing.
Yeah.
Why put so much work and time into it?
So Donald Trump has done this 3 times. He threatened to run in 1988, he threatened to run again in 2000, and he threatened to run again. He said he was gonna run in 2012 too, but he never even got to the point of, got even close. He keeps saying he's gonna run, because every time he says he's gonna run, people start investing in his hotels. He's found that whenever he says that, he gets a lot of interest, especially foreign interest. And when Donald Trump went broke in the early 1990s, and no more banks would lend to him except Deutsche Bank, which interestingly enough, the Supreme Court justice who just retired, that's where his son worked. Just a weird coincidence. All
so many coincidences.
Yeah, he was his banker, but that's just a coincidence. And it's weird that he retired just at the right time. But anyway, when Donald Trump went really, really broke, he got to the point where the only way for him to come back financially, because he couldn't get any more loans, was he started selling his name. He did what Calvin Klein does. Calvin Klein isn't broke, but Calvin Klein's name is sold to CK1 and CK2 perfume. So Calvin Klein doesn't own the perfume, he just sells his name. Most handbags are just, a celebrity who sells the use of their name. It's just a licensing deal. And Donald Trump really, when he runs, the Trump organization is just it's a very small, family-owned licensing firm. And so what they do is they license his name to hundreds and thousands of buildings around the world, but he really legitimately only owns about 4. He owns Trump Tower, another Trump Tower, Mar-a-Lago, and the Nike building.
So all these resorts and spas we see around the world, these huge things we see in Latin America or Middle East or wherever, it's all just the license.
He gets paid like $500,000 a year to license the Trump name, because so his goal of constantly making himself more famous is it makes the value of that license go higher. So if the value goes higher when he just gets on the old Larry King show, think about how much higher it got when he had The Apprentice. And remember, the first season of The Apprentice had 22 million viewers its first episode. It was a huge hit. And so the value of that license went way, way up. And so then what Donald Trump essentially started doing was selling his name, but also when he did have condos that were associated with buildings, he didn't own the building, but he got a fee, a percentage. If 100,000 people buy in this unit, he gets like a fee. Russians started buying into these buildings like crazy.
Russians, you say?
Russians. And it's weird that specifically Russians became his best customers. And Donald Trump has had this weird affinity for Russia since the 80s. He keeps marrying Eastern European women. He has this thing about Russia that he's had for a long time. And what we know about Vladimir Putin, who used to be a KGB, he was the Eastern European KGB head, is that when they stopped trying to recruit soldiers to try to woo them over to betray their country, they then moved into trying to recruit business people. And they just wanted them to be on their side, and they wanted to have access to the United States through them. And Donald Trump was brought to Russia in 1987, wined and dined and treated like a celebrity. So he had this affinity, and he had this dream that because now they were open to him, maybe he could build a big Trump Tower there. That he wouldn't own, his partners in Miss Universe, that did the Miss Universe pageant, would own it, but he would get his fee again. So when Donald Trump ran for president this last time, his thought, according to the people I interviewed for the book, was that if he ran for president and he really got into it and did really well, then Vladimir Putin would notice him enough to let him build that tower. This was all about getting a huge tower in London.
Wow.
I mean, in Moscow.
Wow. Putin definitely noticed him.
He noticed him. And now Trump is essentially his useful idiot. I mean, that's a scientific term.
Yes. You mentioned his 2 presidential runs, or his 2 thoughts or promises, maybe threats, to run for president a couple of times. Initially, we imagined it would be as a Democrat.
Used to be one.
At some point, Trump embraced the Republican ideology, at least as a tactic. And now he has a very unique and interesting relationship to the Republican Party that you get at in the book. What is that relationship between, how does Trump become a Republican, and what does Trump mean to the Republican Party now?
Right. I mean, Donald Trump was definitely a Democrat for, most of his adult life, his early adult life. I mean, both Bill and Hillary Clinton were at his wedding to Melania. So were a lot of other celebrities who now pretend like they.
Oh, they all act like they don't like him now.
A lot of them were at his but he wasn't as open, other than Central Park 5. If you were in New York, you knew what he was, but a lot of people either ignored that or didn't know that. But so Donald Trump was a Democrat. As a matter of fact, he was a huge critic of Ronald Reagan. He used to say the country, this will sound familiar, he used to say the country was stupid under Reagan, that the policy toward Russia was stupid. He's always been trashing this country. It's a thing he does. Donald Trump became a Republican because it was just, I think it was just useful for him, because the Democratic Party wouldn't really stomach him, just like rich people in Manhattan wouldn't give him the time of day, and Republicans gave him the time of day. I mean, Jared Kushner and Ivanka, to my knowledge, are still Democrats. Like, they've been registered as Democrats most of the time. They couldn't even vote for him in the primary because they were registered as Democrats. So these people, but I think the relationship between Trump and the Republican Party is that he's useful for them and they're useful for him. His hateful, racist attitude just didn't have a home in the Democratic Party.
Right.
So he couldn't stay a Democrat because there would be nowhere to go thinking like he thinks. The Republican Party accepts it because they increasingly are a white party, and they rely for white Americans for almost all of their votes. They don't get votes much from anyone but white Americans. So within the cohort of white Americans, there is a far right that is extremely violent racist, and then there are the near racists, the people who just, maybe say racist stuff but wouldn't join like the KKK. And so that wing of the party is what's holding the party down right now.
Right.
It's what's keeping them in power. He fits in. And for them, especially for very, very wealthy people, Trump is useful. Because before Trump came along, in order to get poor white people and middle-class white people, it's really not poor because poor people don't vote, but middle-class white people to go along with policies that only help rich white people, they had to cover it in all this like compassionate conservatism and, you're a soccer mom, and they had to like paint over a lot of stuff. With Trump, they don't have to do anything. Because with Donald Trump, he's created a cult. It's a cult of personality. And so they can literally say to people, I'm passing tax cuts, it's just for billionaires. And the base of the Republican Party goes, okay.
Sounds good to me.
Are you going to cage brown people? Yes, we are. Excellent. They don't care. So with him, they don't have to pretend anymore.
Wow. This is depressing. The book's not depressing, but just the reality is depressing. And we're going to take questions too, brother. We're going to take questions. We're going to have microphones in a few minutes, so all y'all can get in on this conversation. I just selfishly have a few more myself. I'm fascinated by Trump's psyche. So much. There's a thread through this book about how so much of what drives Trump, as you said, isn't strategy. It's not this grand vision of political domination. It's ego and narcissism, and to some extent insecurity. I mean, the idea that he wants a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, bad. Nobody's been more peaceful than me. I mean, nobody. But a lot of it is because Obama got one.
100% of it. So in the opening of the book, I liken him to Joker, to the Joker in Batman. If any Batman fans, I'm a nerd, so I love the comics. But if you think about who Joker is in whatever iteration of that story that you read, the Joker really only exists because of Batman. And he only exists to oppose Batman. He doesn't really have an identity outside of Batman. He's obsessed with him. They're both rich, they're both bored, they're both angry, but Batman is angry at injustice, and so he fights bad guys, and the Joker's just angry at Batman for existing. And so he just exists to make chaos, to make Batman miserable. Barack Obama is Donald Trump's Batman. He is. Because if you're a guy who grows up believing that any city or country or state that's run by a black person is crap, if you're a person who believes that white people are naturally smarter than black people and that black people are only good to be athletes and singers, which is the way he treats black people, either you're a famous singer or a boxer or a sports person, or you're crap and stupid and lazy. If you have those stereotypical views, for a black man to be smarter than you, to get elected with a huge 10 million vote majority and win the electoral college by an electoral, remember he keeps talking about electoral college? Yeah. Barack Obama got 336 electoral votes. That's a landslide, electoral college landslide, and a 10 million vote landslide. So for him to get elected twice, and then on top of it, the thing that Donald Trump doesn't have, and I don't want to get too deep into his psyche, but Donald Trump's parents, from what other biographers told me, were very cold. And so Donald Trump, to me, is this sad old man who sees Barack Obama get the love he wants. You know, Hollywood loves him. Fashion loved, Mrs. Trump, Mrs. Trump. Michelle Obama's being dressed by all the greatest fashion houses. People everywhere Barack Obama goes, children are screaming and like, oh my God. No one does that for him.
Well, the children scream, but
they're screaming. Ow! But I think that's what it is. I mean, he tried, the one, I think it might have gotten cut out because the book was getting too long, but when Trump got inaugurated, when I tell you he had Steve Wynn, who's this really rich Vegas guy, call everybody famous, he couldn't get anyone to perform. He couldn't even get Kanye to perform at his inauguration. Kanye likes Trump. He couldn't get anyone. He is so thirsty that he was literally willing to sign what they call prison reform just to get Kim Kardashian to come to the White House and take a picture with him. That's the only reason he did it. He's so thirsty for love and support from the right people, even though the people who love him are people he wouldn't wipe his behind with. He wants the people who like you. He wants the people who love Hollywood. That's who he wants. He can't get them. He's a sad, sad little creature. But if you look at people who are autocrats, they're often that way. They're egotistical. They're extremely self-centered. They demand praise, and if you won't give them praise, they want to punish you. And Donald Trump would love to be Kim Jong-un and have everyone in America have to march and salute him and praise him and smile when he's around. He would love to do that. He just can't have it.
One of the things he does when people don't give him the attention he wants is, particularly in the media, in general, he sticks the dogs on them. In terms of media outlets, he has a very particular relationship to the news corps, to the press corps rather, than any president in American history, I would argue. How does that happen, and why does that happen?
I liken his relationship to the American media to like an abusive father or an abusive spouse. To where the media seems to just hang on for that moment when he's a good guy. They just hang on for that moment when he's normal. And so they're so desperate for him to just be a normal president, to just be Jeb Bush, that they keep treating him like he is. Mr. President, Mr. President. They're so polite. You know, when he calls them enemy to people, they keep coming back. I mean, I have asked members of the press, well, why don't y'all just walk out when he was doing that to you? Right. But they're like, well, he might not let us back in, and you know, we have to have access to. Our job is to find out. My sources in the White House said, I must have that call. It's like an abusive relationship. And so at some point, most countries that become autocracies have that kind of relationship, where the autocrat has cowed the press where the press won't fight them as an aberration. They treat them as normal. And it's normal, and it's normal, and it's normal, and then it's Cuba as it is now. And it's normal, and it's normal until it's Poland as it is now, or Hungary as it is now, or Italy as it's going. These countries, Americans, you know, we haven't experienced this yet. It can happen real fast. And by the time the press figures it out, it's too late.
Would you call this a fascist regime?
I would. If you look at what makes a regime fascist, the marriage of corporate and very great wealth with supposed democracy, sort of fake democracy, where you vote, but your vote doesn't necessarily matter, or you're not sure. You're not sure who was elected, you're discouraged from participating, and where you have an autocracy. I would say at minimum it's an autocracy already. And the reason I would say that is because the systems that are supposed to prevent it from going all the way fascist are breaking. I don't know which one. I mean, the Attorney General of the United States is now going to go back to killing people in the death penalty. He can just make that decision himself. He overruled his own department to say that the man who murdered Eric Garner can just walk free. They are an autocracy. He essentially has said in not so many words, Donald Trump can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And no one can stop him. I don't trust the Supreme Court, do you, to stop him? So the minimum, we're an autocracy. And if we don't if we don't do something, honestly, 2020 might be it. We might be, I mean, this little experiment, it's not, it's not destined to survive.
Yeah. I think a lot of people thought that was hyperbole.
It might have been in previous elections. We've always said this is the most important election. I mean, honestly, this is no joke this time.
Do you think, I mean, there's a very strong record of incumbents winning. Incumbents usually win. I mean, we saw George W. Bush, despite whatever you think about George W. Bush in relation to Trump, still a fairly awful president with regard to the values that we hold, many of us in this room hold dear, lying about weapons of mass destruction, all the things that happen, the handling of Hurricane Katrina, all these things happen, and despite that, he was reelected. And it wasn't, I don't know, I remember looking at those returns when Kerry didn't win Ohio and thinking, wow, this shouldn't have been a nail biter given everything we've seen. Trump seems to defy the odds at every turn. Every time he says something crazy, we go, all right, it's over. The summer before he got elected, we thought it was over when that videotape came out of him talking about grabbing women. We just keep, it's over, nobody can overcome this, nobody can overcome. He overcomes all of it. What reason do we have to believe that he won't overcome Mueller, that he won't overcome more scandals, racism, the tweets that come endlessly? What reason do we have to believe that he won't win again?
Oh no, you should believe he can win again. 100%, he's most likely to win again. I mean, I worked on the 2004 campaign. So I was in Florida working for an outside organization funded by George Soros, who, by the way, is a great man. I don't care what nobody says. Let's stop taking on, people going after him. He's a wonderful guy who wants to just help people in the world. So I worked for this company, this organization. We were trying to defeat George W. Bush, and I was on the press team. So my job was to say, we are gonna win. There was about a month before the election when in my head, myself and my friend who was political director, we said, oh my God, we just might lose. That's when we first realized we could lose.
Wow.
And it was terrifying. Something. This is the worst at the time. This is the worst president ever. He was ranked as the 3rd worst president or 4th worst president. He was ranked below Nixon at that point.
Wow.
Like, I know he's happy with Trump there. He's like, woo! Oh my God. Thank you. He's in church. He's telling the Lord, thank you. Because he's not the worst anymore. I mean, Michelle Obama's like hugging him now.
Oh, for sure.
She's just a nice person. But so, and what I learned in the 2004 election is that the power of incumbency is real. You have the biggest megaphone, you have Air Force One, you have power already, and so you can compel everyone in your party to go along with you even if they don't agree with you. You have the media that's going to give you uber deference, where they're never going to give the challenger the kind of deference they give you, even if you're Donald Trump. And you have so many more resources. He's already raised $100 million. Everybody rich, they pretend they don't see the racism, but they love the tax cuts. Because you realize y'all paid for those tax cuts, right? And what he did is he charged you all of us paid. Every dime that you paid went right to them. And they paid nothing. He's made it so the very rich are getting everything they want. So that means the very rich who already, I mean, we are essentially a minority rural country, right? So the small percentage, about 30% of the country that is white and conservative controls the 70% of the country. They control us already. So think about it, they'll spend anything to keep that money coming. It's all about money, they want it. And so it's gonna be hard to beat him, that's real.
But how do we do it? Because I believe that organized people can always defeat organized power. I believe we can win. What needs to happen? What I know can't happen is we can't show the contradictions of what he said 8 years ago. Because every day, this is literally a Trump tweet
every minute.
For something he said 8 years ago that's the exact opposite of what he's saying now. It ain't a sex scandal. It ain't catching him lying. It ain't proving he's broke. It ain't making him look crazy. I mean,
No.
so we've tried all that.
Right.
What is the most effective strategy for the left, for progressives, for liberals, for people identifying on the left in whatever sort, to defeat Donald Trump?
So today I had Tim Wise on the show, and yeah, he's great. And Tim grew up in the South, Southern white guy, and his first big job in politics was fighting David Duke. And a lot of people get, a bit offended when you say David Duke in relation to Donald Trump, but the reason that I think it's analogous and why I wanted to have him on is that, Trump being racist is immaterial to me. Okay, Abraham Lincoln was racist. Abraham Lincoln wrote letters saying everybody black should be sent back to Africa. His personal attitude toward black people was terrible. His personal attitude was horrible. Yeah. But FDR wasn't exactly friendly to black folks. His wife was cool, right? His wife was cool. I mean, Woodrow Wilson was a straight up, open-faced racist. Andrew Johnson, Andrew Jackson, genocidal racist. Like, we've had racists. That don't bother me. I mean, there's racists, just leave me alone. You know what I mean? Live your own life. You can't watch basketball because you're mad because you hate black people. That's not my problem. I don't care about it being racist. I don't care if people are racist. I truly don't. Don't bother me. You can be racist all you want.
Right.
But what Donald Trump is selling to white America, and it is dangerous, is white nationalism. It's very different from racism. You can be racist and think you're better than black people, but not believe this country is fundamentally only for white people. That's what white nationalism is. It's saying this is a white country, and if you're not white, you are not fully American. This isn't your country. We're letting you stay here. And as long as you behave and you're docile and you do what we tell you, and speak English when we tell you to speak English, and don't come in the building unless you show us ID, he's empowered other white Americans to believe they also have this power. Yeah. That anybody you see, if they look too brown, they speak too much Spanish, you as just an individual, that's what we had when we had apartheid here. Yeah. That even a child could tell a grown-up black person what to do, where to go, how to speak. If you're rude to the 10-year-old, you get lynched, right? So I mean, the reality is, he's giving that path is very seductive. Even if you didn't originally think of yourself as a white nationalist, this idea that he's giving you this immense power. Yeah. Think about that. You see somebody coming in your building, you can say, I need to see your ID. You're not a cop. What happened to Trayvon Martin? Some dude who is not a cop thought he had the right to say, who are you and what are you doing here? Show me your ID. This isn't South Africa yet. And so the reality is Donald Trump has transformed the Republican Party into something else. It's the National Party in South Africa. It's closer to what they are now. They are a white party that is geared toward keeping white people in power when the country inevitably becomes majority non-white. That's what it's all about now. That's the whole game. The census guy gave it away. Yeah. That's why they got overturned in the Supreme Court. Because the guy who died, who wrote the policy up, wrote it down. That we're doing this to make sure Republicans and white Americans keep power forever when the change comes and it's mostly brown country. So what Tim Wise, who beat the guy who was doing this in Louisiana and tried to do it twice, David Duke, who ran for Senate and governor, the way that they defeated him, you can't just say, here's my health care plan, which is what the Democrats right now want to do. Right. They don't even want to say anything specific, they just want to say health care. You can't beat them that way. You can't beat them that way. The only way that you can beat this guy is you have to treat him like he is a nuclear war. You have to treat him like his re-election would be the equivalent of the total destruction of the United States. You have to message, and I don't mean just to white people, because last time Hillary Clinton only got 88% of the black vote. And every Democrat going all the way back to LBJ gets 95%, 95% of black women. I mean, she lost 14% of black men. And some of those voters stayed home, some were disenfranchised, some couldn't vote. Part of it is. And if you have a woman on the ticket, she lost among every race of men. Black, brown, Asian American, white. Women, fewer men of every race will vote for a woman. That's just real. Yeah. But had she gotten the overall share of the white vote, and even among black women, she trended down a tiny bit. And black women still came through, because we come
black
through.
Black women showed up.
We always come through. And so even to black people, to that very point, I don't care who the nominee is, the Democratic Party is going to have to make a case that this election is the end if you don't vote for this person.
Is there, in fact, raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We should probably have, I don't want to make people get up and walk if we don't have to. Do we have someone who can we do a line? Where's Isabel? East. All right, so for Q&A, are we doing a line or are we bringing the mic to people? Okay, so we'll do a line. We'll do a line. So if you have a question, you can line up along this aisle right here or this aisle right there. Now, I want to be very clear. Questions are relatively short. They end in a question mark. So please, if you can, for the benefit of everyone in here, we can get to more questions. If you don't give us a full statement, your full background, just a question.
Can I say something real quick before you go there? Just before
yeah, I got a question for you too.
Oh, okay. Is that, you know, when Barry Goldwater ran for president as a Republican, he like got just destroyed.
Yeah.
The way that he was beaten was, and the ad that was the most effective was literally a nuclear warhead going off.
Wow.
You have to be, this country went hard against Goldwater. That's how you beat somebody that's extremist.
And that seems to be the strategy. Is there a candidate? This is my last question for you for now. Is there a candidate right now? I'm not asking who you support, I'm not asking to endorse anybody. I'm saying, is there a candidate that you think strategically is best positioned to defeat or at least battle Trump on those grounds?
Yeah. Again, so when I was in South Carolina, a Republican strategist told me that the candidate that this person and a lot of Republicans are the most afraid of is Kamala. And the reason they're most afraid of her is she's the opposite of Trump in every way. She's a woman who would appeal to suburban soccer moms. She's a person of color, so she's both black and Indian American, so she would then turn out non-white voters. They would be excited about her. She's a change candidate. And she's the one thing, Donald Trump, the one thing he really fears is prosecutors. He is terrified of prosecutors. I mean, that's not just me. His biographers will tell you that. Donald Trump has done everything to stay out of jail, to stay out of getting prosecuted, because he's done a lot of stuff. Yeah. And he is afraid of prosecutors, and I think he will be so fear. I'm not sure he would debate her. I think he especially now that they saw what she did to Uncle Joe.
She gave Joe the business. Yeah.
She treated him like he robbed her house. So I think, and he's all shook now for it's been like weeks, and he's still mad. Get over it. So I think she's one, and the other one is that the same strategist told me. They said they're most worried about Harris, Biden, and Elizabeth Warren.
That makes sense.
They're worried about Biden because the connection to Obama, and they feel like white voters will be calmed and comforted by him, and that some white voters might say, I can still get pretty moderate policy and not have the racism. And then they're worried about Warren because her appeal is really actually catching on with a lot of white working class voters, because her appeal is, listen, put all that other stuff aside, I can fix your income.
Right. I have the answers to your
I can fix your problem. So it's helping.
That goes a long way. That goes a long way. All right, we're gonna start with my brother right here. Oh, I see. You're smart.
We'll share.
I don't need to talk to him.
Oh, that's why I'm like, no, you don't need to talk. Hi there, and thank you so very much, Joy.
Sure.
Two things real fast. How do you keep your joyful spirit in the midst of all of this? That's one thing. I'm kind of working on that myself. Anyway, also about, number 45, putting children in cages, and you did speak about aspects of his psyche. Do you think that he has become the abuser of children because perhaps he was psychologically caged and whooped and disregarded as a kid?
So I don't think Donald Trump would have even known those kids were in cages if somebody didn't tell him. Donald Trump doesn't make his own policies. There's a guy called Stephen Miller in there who, I quoted someone in the book, and this is not from my own reporting, but from another report that described him as Waffen SS. And this young man is Jewish. So for somebody to describe him that way as being akin to having almost Nazi-like beliefs, Stephen Miller really seems to hate brown migrants with a passion. Trump does too, but this guy's systematic and cruel. He used to work for Jeff Sessions, who had this idea of taking our immigration policy back to not the 50s, but the 20s. when they openly banned Chinese people. Like, he wants that era. These people are extreme. Donald Trump, by the way, has put into his administration some of the most extremist and even white nationalist people. He had Steve Bannon. These people are not normal Republicans. They are into white nationalism. And so that's why that's happening. The caging of kids, and one other quick thing, I'm not going to talk too long because I know everybody has to talk. I mean, everybody wants to ask questions. Donald Trump has said to aides that he wants to deport more people than Obama, because again, his Batman, right? Deported a lot of people. And President Obama did a lot of deportations to try to cut a deal with Republicans. He thought if he showed good faith on enforcement that he could get them to make a deal. That's never gonna happen. That's what he thought, because he believes in the system. He's a system guy. Trump wants to beat him, but note that he is not deporting them. If he wanted to beat him, they've got a deportation force that's making people show their papers, that's snatching Americans, that's snatching children, that's stealing children. They could deport them, they're not. So what I think is that this is more Stephen Miller than Trump. They're not stealing them, they're not deporting them, they're displaying them. They're displaying them. There's an article called "The Cruelty is the Point," which we all quote Adam Serwer's piece. The point of lynchings was not just to kill the person, it was to kill the community. The spectacle was the point. The cruelty and making everyone else see it, so that you felt the cruelty and you couldn't. There's stories of people not being allowed to cut the body down under pain of you can get killed. Keep that body up there. If they want to deport these people, deport them. There are lawyers who could go into Mexico and try to get them back. Deport them. They're not. They're holding. They're keeping them. They're displaying them. It's worse than deporting. Oh, how do I keep my joy? Well, my name is Joy, so it's no, I mean, I basically, great family. I don't know where my husband went, but my husband is here. I have a great family, great kids, great friends, and basically in order to keep myself sane, I'm a TV kid, I'm a Generation X person, so I just watch a lot of TV. I watch like zombie shows, and right now I'm watching House of Cards, which is really not helping. Well, I watch TV, I just try to chill, what can you do? I mean, you can laugh through it, you can cry through it.
Hi, thank you so much for coming to speak with us. My name is Izzy Jackson. I'm the founder of Well City Solutions. We help landlords reduce evictions by finding jobs and community resources for their tenants.
You better call Jared Kushner, because apparently got a lot of problems in that area.
So I watched your show this morning and I was interested in what they had to say about 2020. Do you think that since Trump hasn't faced any, first, do you support Nancy Pelosi's rhetoric around not impeaching Trump? And second, do you think that since Trump has not faced any consequences for tampering with the election, that there will be tampering in the next election?
Yes. No, I do not support Nancy Pelosi. I have great respect for Speaker Pelosi, Baltimore girl, very smart politician. I think she and I just happen to disagree on this. I think if you don't impeach this president, you have to take impeachment out of the Constitution. If it's not for him, it's for nobody. And if you don't do it, I also think, number two, quickly, I think Donald Trump is also terrified of impeachment, because let's explain, impeachment is not removal. The trial is removal. Impeachment is an indictment, because the House of Representatives has the power to flip into becoming a judicial entity in that one instance. Because since the president's own body can't indict him, because he is the boss of the Attorney General, the only person who can indict him is the House. So if you don't indict him, there's no president who can ever do it. So Congress loses its power. We're in trouble as a country. It means he can get away with anything. And there already is election interference, not just from Russia, but Iran. You're going to have North Korea probably jump in there. Israel's right-wing government probably wants to get in there. Saudi Arabia. You name it. It's going to be an open season. We will no longer be choosing our president. It's bad. And by the way, and this doesn't get talked about enough, a lot of what the Russians did was voter suppression of black people. And we don't talk about it enough in the media, that what they did is they went into a lot of black people's social media and said Hillary Clinton's a killer, Hillary Clinton kills black people, Hillary Clinton kills black, Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton, like she did the crime bill, and got black people to self-disenfranchise themselves and not vote. That was part of the purpose of it. A lot of that purpose was directed at us.
So just to be honest with y'all, there's a lot of people online and we're not gonna get to all these people. And I don't want y'all to feel bad.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want y'all to wait in line. Just in the interest of time, we're probably going to only be able to take 4 more questions. And I don't want y'all to be waiting in line thinking you're going to get the question asked. Because we want to make sure that Joy has time to actually sign books and take pictures and see y'all and get some sleep and get home so she keep fighting a good fight. So we're gonna take, what we'll do is we'll take 3 questions on this side and 3 questions on this side.
That's it.
First, I'd like to thank you very much, Joy, for coming to Philadelphia and honoring us with your presence. My question is 2-part. The first of which is, how do we thwart Donald Trump's being re-elected if he again loses by 3 million votes?
We'll take that as the question. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
If he loses, but he wins the right states, you can't. The Electoral College will elect him. There's nothing you can do.
What do we do about the Electoral College?
I think that's the big one.
The Electoral College, if Democrats win, well, I mean, there are a lot of states. I think there are like 30 states that have signed this compact that they will actually just go with the popular vote. So more states need to do that. So Democrats need to focus on taking over states, win those state election, vote in your state elections. Because if Democrats control the state, you can then push your state to sign onto that compact that would negate the Electoral College. And it should be negated.
Hi, Joy. Welcome to Philadelphia.
Thank you.
Last night on Saturday Night Politics, you were a panelist with Donnie George on MSNBC, and you all talked about voting machine irregularities. There was something that was interesting that I had heard of about the Windows 7 that expires in January 2020. They said Pennsylvania was one of those states. What could we do to ameliorate that situation as far as folks from Pennsylvania that are dealing with this Windows 7 irregularities on voting machines?
Yeah, it would have been nice if Mitch McConnell had let that bill come through that would have forced these machines to have paper ballots, but he didn't. You have to, this is through your state legislature. Your vote is controlled by your state. You do not have a federal right to vote. It's in your state. So everything about your vote is controlled by your state. So you need to be calling, writing, petitioning, protesting in front of, get out in front of those people who run your state. Find out who your state rep is, find out who your state legislator is, write the governor, write your, anybody any elected official you can get your hands on, you can let them know that you want them to change it and to switch these machines out for paper ballot machines. And no Puerto Rico, and before people think it can't be done, Puerto Rico.
Delaware. I watch HGTV and MSNBC like it's going outside. But saying that, my only concern is how are you all going to start pushing people to local level more? Because that's really where we're getting run over. And while Trump is up there, we got to vote locally too. So how can you all push that? Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to do local news on a national channel. It's just difficult to fit that in with all the stuff that's happening at a national level, but you all can do that. Remember, everybody has access to Twitter and social media. You have your own show. You have your own show among your friends, right? If you're popular among 200 people on Twitter, that's your show. So you should be pushing your friends. You better make your friends vote if you want to win. Anybody can win. By the way, I sounded pessimistic earlier. The way you beat Trump is you make it real hard to steal. If the Democrat gets a 10 million vote majority and they still don't win the Electoral College, that's going to look real funny. And the Democrat in this race, if it does look funny and it doesn't look legit, they better do better than Al Gore did and don't let it happen. Stop giving in. Real quick, you remember that when Al Gore lost, and he did lose Florida, they didn't even barely fight. I mean, they went to the Supreme Court, yes, but then they turned it over. And not one Democratic senator would refuse to validate those Florida votes. The Black Caucus went and they begged. They were like, give us just one. Each member of the Black Caucus was an Asian American member, and I think one white member. We're all begging. I mean, Democrats need to learn to fight like Republicans. If the person who's the nominee isn't pleasing you, if they didn't buy a horse for you and bring it to your home, bring you a pie, I don't care. If you're not perfect, you don't vote like a Republican did. They will vote for Satan if he was a Republican. That's the difference between them and us. And they're doing now, beware. Because the way we lost, one of the ways we lost in 2004 is that Republicans in 11 states put anti-gay marriage amendments on 11 different statewide ballots. You talk about local elections, they use those statewide ballots to drive out a lot of right-wing Christian, white Christian voters to make them vote against Kerry. Now they've got a new one that they just rolled out in Florida, which is an amendment saying only citizens can vote for president. That's already the law. They do not need that on their ballots. So they use hate to get people to come to the polls. And they're already doing it. So you need to look sharp in your state. If that's on the ballot, you're going to need to get out even more voters. Everybody should think about registering 5 people you don't know, 5 teenagers you don't know. You're going to have a surge of voting to beat this guy. That's the only way to win.
Hi, Joy. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. My name is Kerwin Capers. I like to speak about the narratives that the media sets for us. When I'm talking about, Malcolm X would say, they always like to label us. I'm talking about why they call these wonderful 4 congresswomen the squad. It's that in itself is labeling. I wish the media would stop that and tell them, stop labeling the squad, because it's a firing squad. So can you speak about that?
Well, at this point, they're calling themselves that. So I refused to do it. I did not call them the squad at first because I felt the same way. But then they started calling themselves the squad. And they did the same thing that President Obama did. Dumbest thing Republicans ever did was name the Affordable Care Act Obamacare. And when they did it, they thought it was a pejorative, but Obama embraced it. And now, you have right-wingers who are like, don't touch my Obamacare. Don't touch my Obamacare. So I think that they've been very smart because they're good marketers. Those girls are really smart. And they took that and they've already run with it. So now I think it's fine to use it because they're doing a thing where like we're all the squad. So I think don't mess with marketing. If the marketing is like when I first started doing TV, my social media producer who's brilliant, Alexis, who if you watch the after party on the show, Alexis is the one running it. We do a little social media thing. And she came up with this thing, readers. And at first I was like, I don't want to use that, it's too self-referential, but it caught on, and so I'm like, I'm going to embrace it. Embrace good marketing. That's good marketing, and it helps them be more powerful. But the media does make narratives that are silly, and there's a conventional wisdom to a lot of what the media does that makes, Mueller, just real quick for instance. The narrative after this man, who is a war hero, came out and explained, very simple question, did you exonerate Trump? No. Did you find instances that look like obstruction of justice? Yes. Is Trump clear on that? No. Could it be indicted later? Yes. And the media came out and said, his theatrical performance, he seems really old. But yeah, he is old. How do you want him to act? What did they want him to do? Did they want him to come out and like break dance? What did you want him to do? He is old. He's a senior citizen. And he said he didn't want to go. Put him and all of those prosecutors. I would have lined those prosecutors up next to him, and whenever he didn't feel like answering a question, he could have said, prosecutor who did all of the stuff about his finances, take this one. Prosecutor over here who did obstruction, take this. He could have the Democrats were at fault too, but the idea that his performance, the performance is a disaster. What? Most prosecutors are not like Kamala Harris. Most prosecutors are not theatrical. She's a very rare and really good prosecutor, like what's his name, fellow OJ trial, I'm forgetting. If the line don't quit, right. If the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Like he was one of a kind, but most prosecutors aren't like that. So, and also, by the way, just to be clear, and all y'all know that, but I feel like sometimes my friends are needed to understand this. Folks, it's called the Mueller report because he was their boss. Robert Mueller didn't write the Mueller report. He didn't memorize it. They thought he didn't know the lines from the Mueller report. He didn't write it. He was their boss. What CEO writes the report? It's called the Mueller report because he was these people's boss. And then the man retired. He told y'all in April, I'm retired. So you think for the last 3 months he's been home like, let me reread the Mueller report. I might have to be asked about this someday. I better memorize page 234. I don't want to be not first. He's been on vacation. Y'all pulled him off vacation. The man been in a hammock with his wife, trying to chill and watch television and HGTV and redecorate his home. And then y'all drag his behind out and say, well, he didn't seem excited to be there. No, he wasn't. He didn't ask y'all to bring him over there. And Democrats, y'all could have done impeachment without him there. He only told you what was in the report. Read it for yourself. And then impeach him on your own. Stop making he is not Superman. He is not picking out a cape every morning and figuring out how to swoop in and save you from Donald Trump. That is not his job. He did his job. Leave that man alone. Let him retire. Leave him alone.
something that I don't hear talked about very much, but I think it's really important in terms of thinking about this next election. I think one of the things that the outside influences did and have tried to do is to divide us by groupings, by skin color, by nationality, by whether we're immigrants or citizens. So I think that the key to winning is for us to unite more. And I think that part of uniting more means I would like your help in finding language to talk about.
Just getting to the question. You're asking her, Joy, to help. What kind of language can we develop to?
What kind of language can we develop? So, no one else got interrupted, and I'd like to finish my damn question, okay? Okay, I'm going to finish my question.
No, I want you to finish your question.
But I don't appreciate it.
Well, I think the reason people keep yelling questions because everyone else observed the rule of not giving a statement before the question. But I want you to.
Not everyone. Okay.
So, but that's the reason.
Okay, I'm doing the best I can.
Please do. Please continue.
Okay, so I'm feeling that we continue to be divided by skin color and joy. I feel that part of that is you've done it here also, and that's how I felt. Okay, I feel like I'm being seen differently because of my skin color, and hold on. I can say what I feel, and you can listen to me. Why not?
Okay.
Why not?
Okay, hold on. All right, listen. Can I answer your question?
I would really like it.
Okay, let me answer your question. Here is the challenge that we face in America. I'm going to talk to you. We have a history, and the history is what it is. It is a history of abject racism that began with slavery. Hold on a second, let me answer you. The fact that happened, and that you benefit from that, and I don't, and Mark doesn't. That is a fact, not an accusation. And I think the reason that we can't get further as Americans is to be blunt with you. White America has a really hard time hearing the fact as something other than an accusation. And I have to clap. I'm not trying to come after you. What I'm saying to you is this. Now, hold on a second. If I say, this white lady robbed my house, that's a terrible thing for her to do. She took things that were important to me. That doesn't say you robbed my house, but you can acknowledge that she did that. We had a system in this country where I couldn't even sit here 50 years ago, where I couldn't even speak back to you. Whatever you said to me, I had to listen, or I could be killed. Now that's just a fact. That informs everything that happens after that. And one of the other reasons that I did write this is that I feel like American history has been used for great civics, but not great information. We're in the 100th year of the summer of 1919, which was the Red Summer. We're not in the South, where we think of troglodyte racism being from, but in New York and in Chicago and we had race riots in Boston over people not wanting their schools integrated. And I'm not talking about in the 1800s, I'm talking about in the 1970s. So when I'm telling you, when my mother came to this country, her schoolmates at NYU would want to ask her for the answers on the tests, which she wasn't going to give them. But they wouldn't ride in a cab with her in New York City. Okay? So what I'm telling you is that the facts of what we are and the pain of what we are, white America at some point has got to let go of the myth. You can walk away. I'm just telling you. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you. No, but I'm talking to you. But I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. Because what I'm saying is, but it's just not like a person. I don't know how else you would speak to somebody. You're obviously a person, right? So I'm talking to you. We're having a conversation. I mean, we can have it or not have a conversation. But what we're doing right here, and the fact that you can't accept just the facts. So here's the reality. A grown-up nation can accept its past and accept the pain that you participated in, not because you did it. When people say, well, my family didn't have any slaves. No, you didn't. Your family didn't have any slaves. But your family might have fought for people who had slaves to keep them. Because you thought the wages of whiteness, W.B. Du Bois described it, well, you may not have slaves, but if you play your cards right, you might. You might not want to, you know, partner up with her, because you might own her. You want to be with me, because she is somebody that could be your property. Don't go with her. The greatest trick that's ever been pushed in this country on white people is to convince white people that their lot is with rich white people and not with regular black people. Because let me tell you something, and I don't want you to be upset. While, and this, I'm gonna say this just to white folks. One day y'all gonna realize that on this hand, they're dangling little brown kids in front of you to make you feel superior. On this hand, they robbing your pockets. They are picking your pockets, they're stealing from you. They think y'all are suckers, they don't respect you. They think you're racist, they think you're stupid. They think they can just show you racism, you're gonna go run into it. If I was white, I would be incredibly offended that there are people in this country who think I'm so dumb that you can take my money as long as you show me a black person and say I'm better than them. If I feel better, even if I'm broke, even if I have nothing, but at least I'm not black, well, good for you. That's not giving you anything. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to join with you. We're trying to help you. We're trying to help you. We had to get over slavery, Jim Crow, murder, rape. We got the hell over it, and we still believe in America. We're trying to help you. Work with us. Work with us. Go with us. We're trying to help you. We're trying to help them not rob you. They're robbing you. I mean, I'll just keep it real. White folks, we're trying to help you. We're not trying to hurt you or accuse you or say you're bad people. You're not white privilege. It's not your fault. You still got it. Right? If somebody robbed the bank and put the money in my pocket, okay, I didn't rob the bank, but I still got it. You still got it. You don't have to feel guilty like you did it, but work with us. We're better off. What Democrats need to do is tell white people that. Work with us. Because you know what? When we're running things, you're going to have health care. We can't tell you exactly what it's going to look like, but it's going to be health care. You're going to have, you're going to go to the dentist. These people are literally telling you, be racist, but you can't go to the dentist. Be racist and hate brown people, but you can't take your child to the doctor when they're sick. You got to go broke. How stupid do they think people are? And the suckers that go for it, leave them behind. Not everybody can go to the kingdom. Leave them behind. But the people who are smart enough to realize that robbery is robbery. And I mean this with all my heart.
Yes.
We don't say this because we hate anybody. We're saying it because we love this country as it was written, not as it has been experienced. So we're saying experience it with us the way it was supposed to be. It was written to be a good country. God damn it, let's make it a good country together. Stop going with Trump. I'm in a church instead of think I'm preaching. Let me put the microphone in.
Going to the church. I didn't want another question after that. The doors of the church are open now. Anybody who feels rude, come on down. We about to be shouting and running around this thing. We got time for this. This is the last question, then we're gonna go. Shut up,
So I feel like after you took us all back into church yet again in church.
And I'm a Methodist too, so I'm actually surprised in myself.
That was some Pentecostal preaching. That was some in the building at 4 p.m. preaching right there.
And I'm a Buddhist and I was
Hey!
I have a decidedly unsexy question after all of this. I'm always working during your show, but I am a freak for the after party
Yes.
live, so I catch that all the time. Last week, you spoke to an issue of strategy, and you were talking about the voters who are lost forever, and and white fear that causes some folks to lean more toward Biden, Bernie, and all of those. And you spoke to actual, sort of percentages of what we actually need, numbers-wise, to do better than Hillary did. Can you speak to that again?
Yeah, I'll be very quick. Ron Brownstein, who's brilliant, who's a writer, I think he's for Los Angeles Times, he's on CNN, so we can't book him on my show, unfortunately. He laid out the numbers when President Obama was up for re-election in 2012, when a lot of the pundit class thought President Obama was going to lose. And what he found is that in the United States, in order to win the election, Democrats need 80% of voters of color, meaning African American, Latinx, and Asian American voters combined, 80% of them. And they need about 4 in 10 white voters. You need about 48 to 49% of white women, and you need about 35% of white men. 35% of white men that's the best you're probably going to do, because most white American men are Republicans and people vote partisan. So what President Obama got was about that. And then every 4 years, the electorate gets 2% more non-white. So the percentage you need of non-white voters keeps going down, and the percentages you need of white voters also goes down. So Democrats, what I'm basically saying is, the best you're going to do if you're a Democratic candidate in 2020, is going to be, if you can get the 48% of white women who voted for Hillary to be 49, and make sure it's in the right states. You just need 49. You don't need all of them. You just need 49%. You need about 35% of white men. You need to get your typical 94% of black women. You're going to get about 75% of Latinos and 75% of Asian Americans. That's the formula. And it's pretty much a formula now since President Obama. The only president in the last 20 years who's gotten exactly that formula is Barack Obama, twice. That's how you win. So everybody who's saying only Biden can win because he's a white man, the last person who actually won and won that way was Obama. So you just need to win the way he won. And he won Indiana, and he won North Carolina the first time, in 08. He actually won both those states, and he barely lost them the second time. So Democrats need to stop looking at the Clinton 92 race as their model, and look at the Obama 2008 race as the model. You need to drive out black votes. Black votes are the cornerstone of the Democratic base, so they need to drive out black votes at Obama levels or close to it. They need to drive out more Latino votes. Latino voters vote at the smallest share versus their percentage. There's 15% of the country is Latino, but they only make up 7% of the electorate. They tend not to vote. And the reason they tend not to vote is they tend to be very young. And young people don't vote. So they're very young. So a lot of them are just young, they just don't vote. But if you can get that up to like 10% of the electorate being Latino, that's really good. Or if they ever voted their vote share, this is the reason that, by the way, the reason that you're having this sort of ethnic cleansing attitude in the Republican Party, if Latinos ever really voted at 15%, the Republican Party would be finished. Because they would vote, about 75% Democratic, and it would be impossible for Republicans to win. That's why they're targeting them. So that's why they want to get rid of them and scare them so they won't vote. So Democrats, just get your vote out. For Democrats, if you're a strategist, get your vote out. Don't leave absentee ballots on the table. I would advise a lot of you to vote absentee because it's paper. And Republicans tend to vote absentee, so vote the way they vote because they don't mess with absentee. Except in North Carolina where they stole them and they said, don't let anybody come get your ballot. Make sure it's reputable, but absentee is safe because that's how they vote. Keep that in mind. They don't suppress absentee because that's how they vote. Keep that in mind. Vote how they vote. Vote on paper if you can. Vote absentee. In a lot of states, you don't have to have a reason. So please register people to vote. And if you can, vote absentee.
Everybody, this has been an amazing conversation. We got a whole lot more than we bargained for. We got a talk, a sermon, motivational speech. I couldn't be more grateful